Mechanics of Reddit. Which car shows up at your shop most often? Story 1 Autotech here. I would have to say Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep are the worst new or used, constant electrical problems due to their genius idea of a totally integrated power module. Basically it's the fuse block under the hood with non-replaceable relays. What your left headlight doesn't work, that will be 700. Even worse is their PT Cruiser, electrical problems galore, control arm bushings go bad design of the engine mounting so the car vibrates constantly even after replacing all the mounts, shifter cables stick so can't pull it out of gear. Bad seatbelt sensors that when ordered new from the dealer are bad now onto bad used cars out of warranty. Stay away from European cars. BMW, Mercedes, VW, Audi, Saab. What I see with them is mostly previous owner neglect, sludged motors, cracking vacuum hoses, worn out brakes and struts, expensive parts and repairs. All manufacturers build some turds, but these are the ones that stick out most because I deal with over 100 cars a week by all the manufacturers at my job. One thing that Japanese manufacturers have over the rest, and why I think their cars are more reliable, is that they got into the customer that maintenance is key. Most of the new cars today use variable valve timing, which is runoff of oil pressure, and if you don't change the oil regularly it will clog up the system, and there is at least an 1K repair if not a whole engine. TLDR worst new and used Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep worst used out of warranty European except Volvo. For some reason do regular maintenance, it will save you in the long run. My 2003 Chevy truck has 315,000 and never has had problem. Story 2 When my last car Saturn crapped out on me for good, I asked the mechanic which cars he recommends, and he said the cars that come into the shop the least are Toyota, Honda and Nissan, and their luxury brands Lexus, Acura, Infiniti. 3 years later and I've never had a problem with my Honda CR-V or my wife's Corolla. Story 3 My buddy's dad runs a shop. He always seems to be working on Fords. That is probably why he hates them so much. I have owned a few Fords and they were good to me. Story 4 Neglected ones. Most cars are pretty darn reliable nowadays. If you're looking to buy a new car, do your research first. After that, it is up to you to have proper maintenance done. Story 5 Every time I buy a car, I feel like I'm stepping up to the craps table. Every maker out there has produced a turd at one time or another. I've been told to hope for a car built on a today or Wednesday. Story 6 Somewhere in an alternate universe Mike the mechanic is commenting Harry Dresden's Blue Beetle edit. Wow, I had no idea there were this many Dresden fans out there. You are all awesome. Story 7 This is completely going to depend on type of shop. Average labor cost of shop area the shop is located in. If the shop specializes in a particular kind of car, German, JP, etc. Story 8 Never buy a Land Rover unless you like to burn money. Newer Mercedes and BMW are good cars. They last a long time, but when they break you will feel the hurt. Anything exotic is a no-no unless you're wealthy. Even a cheap Ferrari, which may seem cool. Hey, Magnum Pi drove one right, good luck. Takes a good tech 21 hours to pull the motor, and you will pull it often if you try to drive that car like an animal ever, or daily at all. Story 9 I know a guy that runs a relatively small shop in London, specializing in German cars. Car he sees most often BMW E46, in all its various forms. Car repair combination that he sees most often Mercedes A-Class W168 gearbox replacement. Story 10 This thread is a great example of how Reddit always misses the opportunity for an informative and helpful post, by telling the same lame joke over 1,000 times. By the way, the simplest answer to this question is Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler are the worst, Honda, Toyota are the best, European are the most expensive to repair, and everything else is somewhere in between. Story 11 Only cars my family has had issues with were anything anti-Chrysler, garbage cars. A coworker of my old man sold him on Volvos and we've been a Volvo family with multiple cars racking up 350k miles. Volvo for life. Story 12 I worked as a mechanic for 3 years, and during that time we were encouraged to give very thorough investigations of vehicles, mostly so they could try and sell the pants off of you. It seemed in my area, more often than not American cars and trucks would generally have more loose or broken parts, tie rods, and will hub bearings, expired brake fluid, bad brake cylinders, etc. etc. I'm a proud American and all that, but unfortunately we build shittier cars. However, American cars are of a lot easier to work on than foreign models. Knowing this I still went out and bought an old F-150, it gives me something to fix on the weekends. Story 13 ASE certified guy here that's the good one. My old man has been fixing cars for nearly 35 years. I've learned a thing or two from him, but he always swears the worst car that was ever built, that had to be fixed the most was the Chrysler K car. He said no two bolts on any of those cars were the same. They could be American or metric sizing, nothing ever lined up body panel wise and they held many secrets from the assembly line they rolled off of.
Story 14 Armored Truck. Im Armored Truck Fleet Mécanique, Yamaha.
Story 15 As someone who's worked at a couple shops for close to a decade now, this is tricky question. All cars are liable to break down in some fashion, but among more modern vehicles last 20 years or so quality as a whole has risen. Are there problem models here and there? Sure, but the manufacturers generally stay on top of things with recalls or updated parts so that any specific issue gets fixed. From my experience the most vehicles I see are GMs, Fords, Toyotas, but that's only because there are more of them on the road by average. Story 16 I work on Turbo Subarus locally for free. Most common reason I have a car in Leaking something from somewhere, this weekend I get to battle in 08 WRXS power steering rack. Edit sometimes I charge $10 an hour for labor or charge $20 to $50 for the job if I'm having money issues or it's a tough job. So not always free, but always dirt cheap. I did motor mounts for $50 recently, a $300 job. Story 17, I just went from the most reliable car I've ever owned 95 Cherokee to a Corolla. I have a feeling I won't be at a gas station or a service station anytime soon, I hope. Story 18, I work at a body shop and hey race what I've come to learn Lexus drivers do not know how to brake. Accord and Civic drivers run into things at angles only damaging one corner. Forerunner drivers get rear-ended more than anyone. BMW drivers cause a minimum of $12,000 in repairs. Audi drivers are picky. Mercedes drivers never assume responsibility for the wreck. Nissan drivers are repeat customers. Volkswagen, Volvo, Camry drivers are nice people. I have a 1989 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo, original engine, transmission etc., 245,000 miles. Love my Jeep Murica. Story 19 Consumer Reports does pretty thorough reports on this sort of thing. There's tons of data, but hey race some summaries from the 2012 report. Most reliable brands 1, Scion 2, Toyota 3, Lexus 4, Mazda 5, Subaru. Least reliable brands 24 Dodge, 25 Ram, 26 Lincoln, 27 Ford, 28 Jaguar. This is overall brand reliability. Obviously individual cars within a brand will be potentially significantly more or less reliable. Other highlights from our survey: the subcompact Toyota Prius C earned our top score, and the worst score went to the V6, four-wheel drive Ford Explorer. Other Prius versions, the hatchback, V-Wagon, and new plug-in hybrid were also above average. Cadillac is the top U.S. brand, having moved up 14 spots this year. Its CTS Coupe was the most reliable domestic car. Mazda is hot on the trail of the three Toyota brands, and its improvement is buoyed by the predicted reliability score for the new 2013 CX-5 SUV, which was much better than average. Audi had its best showing ever, moving up 18 spots to 8th place, making it easily the most reliable European make, and the top non-Japanese brand, Nissan's Leaf, the first all-electric car in our survey, earned a top reliability score. Jaguar, with 2 models in our survey, continued to rank at the bottom. If you're curious about their sample size, those findings from our 2012 annual auto survey are based on subscribers' experiences with 1-2 million vehicles. We use that extensive data to predict how well new cars that are currently on sale will hold up. Story 20 Subarus are great and last forever. I had a 95 Legacy that ran over 22K. It's still running strong after being wrecked so many times. I bought a new 198 Legacy wagon. Still no problems. They last absolutely forever. I've seen them hit 500,000 miles before, well, only once, but still. Story 21 3 of my good friends are mechanics, so I just mass texted them, and got a pretty much the same answers. I myself have been into cars since I was about 20, so hey race what they say most reliable. Honda by far, the 90s Hondas and ones still made in Japan are the best of the best. Excellent resale value. Even 91 to 93 models still sell for $4,000 if they are in good shape. Just change the oil and change the timing belt, and they will run forever. Toyota, near as good, just aren't fun to drive, old people cars mostly. Though Scion is trying to change this. Nissan Subaru, only minor things break, and have great performance. If you got a Honda Toyota as your top from work car, then you want a Scooby Nissan for your weekend fun car. Worst Japanese car Mitsubishi. The Lancer Evos are like jet fighters. Super performance, but need constant maintenance. All their other models are budget garbage for people who can't afford better. Worst car company far anyway. GM, even beating out Dodge. Bad engineering, poor reliability, poor resale. They have had cars with 20,000 miles on them and had complete engine failure. That's not even considered broken in on a Honda. One of my buddies has a guy come in with his 88 Prelude that needed a new clutch, original engine with 786,000 miles. No oil leaks, runs great. Best American car, new Ford models. They are so much better than their 80 Esto 90s models. Most improved car Hyundai, getting more reliable, and some have good performance. Best car for least amount of money, Honda Fit. Worst car for least amount of money, Chevy Spark or Sonic. The low-end models are shitty Korean Daewoo cars that sold so poorly here in the States that GM decided to buy them. Well, what did you expect? European cars are just slightly worse than American car as far as reliability, but generally have better performance, overpriced and often over-engineered. Story 22 I work in fleet management, which means we authorize maintenance work on about 50,000 cars. By far the worst is Chrysler Jeep Dodge. If more people bought Fiats and Alphas, they'd be up there too. Australian-made Fords Falcon and Territories are pretty bad when they're out of warranty. The thing about Chrysler Jeep Dodge is that they're really expensive to maintain, even when they're under warranty. A basic service is more expensive than a BMW service, brakes cost more than Mercedes, and people still buy them en masse. I would buy a Great Wall before I bought a new CJD. Story 23 As a tech at Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler can have a lot of big problems after a while. When I worked at Toyota we just had a lot of cars with little problems. Story 24 Neons, Cavaliers, Cobalts, Corollas, Camrys, Civics, Focus, they're all mostly low-end cars that have been neglected, but we get a lot of BMW 3 Series as the owners don't want to spend dealership prices. Story 25 VWs and Audis, especially from 97-04. If you own one of these, I feel so sorry for your bank account. The local country club also has an old Chevy pickup truck from the 1990s that's back in our garage every couple weeks. Anybody who's driven a 90 CK work truck will have no trouble whatsoever believing this. I know a friend named Big Bill who specializes in Japanese cars. He says the most common make he sees is Mitsubishi. Most of his customers are repeats, so he has the rough idea who comes in the most. For each brand he sees Honda Acura. For anyone wanting a good cheap older Honda, avoid the Passport, really an Isuzu like the Wicked which avoids water. Toyota Lexus 4Runners in terms of SUVs. And for some reason, Camry Solaras break a lot. Nissan Infiniti never buy a Titan Armada or late 90s Maxima. Engine and electrical problems respectively. Mitsubishi for starter. He will not touch the 3000 GTs or anything with a VR4 badge. Of what he does take, 2 customers with Mitsubishi Diamantes come in a scary amount. Story 26. Everyone raves about Hondas, but all my friends seem to be having something going out or breaking on their cars all the time. Meanwhile, I never have issues with my Saturn, a car many people online seem to think is a piece of. Story 27. My dad is a mechanic. He hates Ford, although he says the newer models are finally catching up in quality. In our driveway right now, Toyota Camry X2, Toyota Tacoma, Toyota Avalon, BMW 325. Story 28. Heavy-duty mechanic here. Just saying they all equally break down. Depends on the driver, maintenance staff if any, and proper maintenance. Stuff breaks all the time no matter the make or model. There isn't much you can do except do your job and make some money. Story 29. Not a mechanic, but I was always surprised to see lots of Hondas and Toyotas on the side of the road. They're supposed to be super reliable. Then I realized that living in California that says nothing about their reliability and more about everyone driving imports. Story 30. Not a mechanic, but my old 1999 Pontiac Grand AM broke down almost weekly. Are these notoriously bad cars? I always see other people in similar models and silently wonder if they hate it as much as I do. Story 31. Don't buy a Murano out of powertrain warranty. Diff seals, they are the devil. Personally, I've been working at 2 different garages and my vote goes to Toyotas being the best bang for your buck. Story 32. Hondas have always done me well. 95 Accord still kickin' fine. My father's Camry has never been in the shop and he's had it since 2011. My mom's 01 Ford Expedition had a few problems, but those Ford truck engines will run until the body rots around it. Worst car anyone in my family has owned was a Saturn. That piece of was in the shop every 3 months. Story 33. I own a junkyard and by far your straightest, Intrepids, Breeze, anything with a 2, 7 and a lot of Cavaliers and Taurus and Faux. I think they just sold a lot though, and any Saturn don't buy a View. Story 34. Just wanted to add that French cars are the worst. They're so bad that you don't see many around anymore, at least not in the US. Okay, no French jokes please. Story 35. Had a Saab Turbo, constantly breaking down. Got to know a tow guy pretty well. He said the worst cars were Rolls-Royce and Ferrari. And only 2 kinds of Ferrari owners: old guys who drive a few miles on weekends, and drug dealers. Story 36. Fords aren't the most reliable, but most of their stuff is simple to fix. Chrysler Dodge vehicles are just unreliable and not simple to fix. GM Chevrolet I would say is mediocre in terms of reliability and simplicity, but for the most part it really depends on the driver's habits and less on the car. As long as you perform routine maintenance checks, oil changes are important people, and treat your car with respect, it will last you longer. Story 37. Depends on the demographic really. I run my own garage in a highly established franchise and it really comes down to 2 things, what people around you own and who is going to pay a proper shop the money to do the job the right way. Most days it's the Caravan. A lot of times in the rural areas you get older domestic trucks. In the bigger cities it was mostly Japanese cars, TLDR Caravans in rural areas, imports in the city. Story 38. Insurance adjuster here. Value-wise, which would directly affect a car, Chrysler and Dodge no matter what seem to drop the fastest in value. Honda and Toyotas amaze me how much they hold, their value. Also most Chrysler, Ford, and GM seem to rust out way faster than the rest. Story 39. Our tow truck guys say that if it weren't for Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep products they would go out of business. The transmission shop down the street said the same thing. Story 40. BMWs they leak oil like crazy and have constant electrical issues. VW diesels have a lot of fuel issues, i.e. fuel pump eating itself into a pulp and contaminating the fuel system. VW still denies this as an inherent mechanical issue. All your high-end cars require a lot of maintenance, and if you don't do that very expensive maintenance they will break down. Want a car that will last forever? Buy a Honda Accord and change the oil every 5k miles. Story 41. As a person who worked in auto parts for numerous years, the cars which show up most often are common cars because they are the ones most commonly driven, which means they most commonly need parts. Story 42. Sold Subaru, Jeep, Chrysler, and Ford for 7 years. I used to pick up some sales back in the service department. 75 were Jeep Chrysler customers, 20 Ford, and 5 Subaru. We used to joke that they weren't broken in until they hit 150 km, unless some kid's daddy bought him a WRX. If I were ever to return to car sales, I'd sell Subarus. Story 43. I was driving home one night in my 2002-ish Dodge Shortbed 4x4 pickup which I loved style-wise but hated for its mechanics. I got pulled over by a cop who said I appear to be weaving. It's this truck officer. I said, it just weaves and wanders. Have you been drinking? He asked. Nope. I truthfully replied. Okay, he said. I happen to have the same damn truck, and I know exactly what you mean. I just wanted to make sure you weren't drunk. And he wished me good night and let me go. Story 44. Pep Boys Mastertech here. Every car has its problems. The ones I hate to work on the most. Dodge a Chrysler Jeep. I agree with Wi-Fi Guy 30. Don't worry, not all of them fit the profile. The Wrangler is the most decent Jeep you could buy. Jeep makes a good powertrain. The problem is that they don't put quality electronics in their vehicles. I've gotten pretty good at changing those window regulators though. Also, most Dodge trucks are good. It's the smaller Dodges that you have to worry about. Some of them are very tough to work on and break a lot. Chrysler basically said F you mechanics, right around the year 2000. Nothing after that has been good. They are getting a little better now, but holy they were awful. Want to change your car battery? You just have to remove your tire and inner wheel well first, or worse, the entire intake manifold. Other common ones are the GM and Ford models. We don't really mind those as much because they aren't usually too bad to work on. Speaking of batteries, the Pontiac Solstice instructs you to remove the entire passenger fender and wheel well. To replace the battery you can get it out with just removing the wheel well and tire, but WTF. The car makes that have shown the most improvement over the past 5 years, I would say have to be Kia and Hyundai. They used to suck really cheap, low quality parts that break often, but now they've improved a lot. I drive a 2013 Toyota Corolla, no problems yet at 15k miles, but it is still under warranty so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Edit. Actually the only problem I have with it is it seems to magnetically attract other people's doors. I only just got it in November and there are already 3 dings. It sucks. Story 45. This will probably be buried, but hey, race some stats from a big Finnish company that does mandatory car inspections. Story 46. Just to be clear, I've read posts stating that just about every vehicle is unreliable and breaks down. The only vehicle that can apparently survive the apocalypse is Toyota trucks in third world countries with machine guns mounted on the back. That and I guess Hondas, except some still got lemons. So the moral of the story is it's not what car you get, but who was driving it before. Story 47. Any car owned by someone too cheap to properly maintain it and put OEM quality or higher parts on it. Every time I hear someone bitching about an unreliable vehicle, specifically Audi vehicles, the usual culprit is poor maintenance schedule and Chinese parts. Treat a car with love and respect and you'll get it back. Story 48. I'm amazed no one has said Range Rover. I had a 93 Country LWB for years and it was an electronic nightmare. Mechanicals were solid but man, hit a bump and the lights flicker. Speedo bounces all over the place. It went out for a while week and then hit a bump and went back on. Thing was a tank in winter though. Story 49. Toyotas last forever. Watch the Top Gear trying to kill a Toyota. The thing gets tossed in the surf underwater, burned to a crisp, and still stats with no extra parts and only a normal toolbox. Jeep, the motor will go for 500k probably, but the only thing left along with it will be maybe the glove box door. Everything else falls apart around the motor trans. Story 50. I work at an imports-only shop. Honestly, we mostly see Hondas and Toyotas, but that's due to their popularity and these are all 90s models. The cars that are the least reliable, however, are newer Volvos, Minis, and all German cars. Newer Asian imports are all very reliable, but know that by the time they're 15 years old, they're going to need motor mounts, gaskets, and a lot of other things replaced. Story 51. I work at a Chevrolet dealership. Besides routine maintenance, the car that has the most problems is probably the Impala. The head gaskets intake seals leak oil like a sieve. The front crankshaft oil seals leak on every single 353. 9 engine. The steering gears leak whine like a sumbitch. Rear stabilizer links rattle. SIR coils squeak. App sensor correlation codes are common, and will bearings like none other. Story 52. Chevy Luminas. I drive a Chevy. All our mechanics drove Chevy trucks, but for some reason there was always Luminas in our lot to be repaired. Got so bad that we would get them confused. Story 53. I used to do inspections on bank repod vehicles for an auction near where I live. I can tell you that Eve had a lot of experience with all different types of vehicles, all makes and models. Chryslers with a 2.7-liter V6 were all garbage. I would have to say at least a good 70 of Chryslers with this motor were blown, had a knock or valve noise, something crazy. Also, Chrysler transmissions are junk newer vehicles. Eve also seen a lot of Ford Taurus with bad transmissions, but what I can say is that any vehicle can be a good vehicle with proper maintenance done when it should be. Story 54. A good general rule of thumb is the first or second year of the model refresh for every manufacturer and model is going to be much less reliable than the last year of that model's design. This is within the same manufacturer and model, so go for the last year the particular model's design was made. Story 55. Not a mechanic, but I'm the guy who sells the parts. Chevy, any Chevy, and we have the parts for it on the shelf. Imports break the least. There is a reason Chevy almost went bankrupt and Ford is the one seller. Story 56. Understand that the most highest recommended car in the world, in the hands of a neglectful owner, is going to be a piece of and sold as soon as a major problem arrives which may or may not be fixed. Always get a potential buy checked out by a proper mechanic. Story 57. You should just stay away from any companies that have failed and should be bankrupt right now. Chrysler and all GMs are terrible and should have folded. Uncle Sam misappropriated your hard-earned money to bail out these when they should have collapsed. Their cars are shitty and I get frustrated when I see that people are still driving them. Story 58. A problem with this question is that frequency that a mechanic sees a type of car may be more dependent on how many are in the population, rather than how good or bad the cars are. If you live in an area with a lot of branks, the mechanics are going to see a lot of branks. This does not mean branks are bad, it just means there are many of them in the area. Story 59. Not a mechanic, but opposite answer to the question. I have a 97 Geoprism, short of the really shitty paint job. This thing will not die, I swear it's freaking immortal or some. Story 60. Everything. People need oil changes. In terms of reliability, however, they're all fairly good if you maintain them, but certain people who don't maintain their cars flock to certain types. BMW 3 Series always come to us as absolute garbage, requiring like $5,000 worth of work that the owner declines. Siennas are always ruined. Any Nissan past like 5 years old is blowing head gaskets left, right and center. The reliability also heavily relies on the dealer's maintenance schedule. If you do your oil changes at like 16,000 kilometers like they recommend, then say goodbye to your car suspiciously right as your warranty ends. Basically maintain your car and it won't break down and won't cost you a lot. Unless it's a BMW, then even if you maintain it it'll cost you a lot because you designing cars is hard. Story 61. Tech from Nova Scotia here. I like to work on Hondas and Toyotas, they make my job easier. We have rust here. Those of you who don't know what rust is, be grateful and I envy you. All cars come with things that go wrong. Just the things that go wrong on some cars EVW can cost a lot more than Hondas and other Japanese cars. Most domestic cars from the last 15 years we built to be driven for 5 years and junked. Not to offend any hardcore Chev or Ford fans, but neither carmaker has built a decent-looking car since the late 60s, with some exceptions of course, and the quality is just garbage. I really do not know what the engineers at either company were thinking when they built vehicles, as though they had 5,000 engineers and none of them talked to each other during the process. Well, that's my rant. All cars break, just some cost more to fix, and stay away from anything with a Mazda 2, 3, 4 sill. They are known for the timing chain jumping which takes out your valves. I've seen this a lot. Just a heads up. Let me know what you guys think about what Eve said. Been looking for a good debate with mechanics, just to see what it's like to work on cars in other places in the world. Story 62. Causes that come to mind for varying frequencies. The number of cars out there, the year of the car which determines how old they are, the type of person that tends to drive that kind of car, the quality of that model of car, the appearance vibe of the shop encouraging certain owners, but not others to bring it there. Story 63. I used to work for a car rental agency, and I saw a decent number of cars that needed service early on. We didn't normally keep cars for much longer than 40 km. The vehicles I most often found with some sort of problems were the Kia Rio, Hyundai Accent, Dodge Charger, Chrysler 300 and the Chevy HHR and Impala. Now proportionally speaking we had a ton of HHRs and Impalas, but we also had 10 tons of Malibus, town and countries caravans, Focuses, and a good number of Corollas. But almost all of our Charger 300s had brake issues, Impalas had all sorts of random transmission or steering issues, HHRs had power steering and airbag issues up the yin-yang, and the Rio Accents invariably had the rotors go out and by 30 km the throttle pedal lost all subtlety. But I attribute the issue with the Rio Accent to the unending abuse they were put under by people used to driving larger vehicles with more powerful engines. Edit. I forgot the stupid Dodge Caliber. That was a real hunk of junk. Story 64. Anything American made. Unfortunately, the best cars are generally Japanese cars, minus Mitsubishi. Mazda is American made. Don't let them fool you. A lot of the German cars run extremely hot and burn oil. This is mainly true for BMWs, but it goes across the board generally speaking. Story 65. Infinities. Might be because I work at an Infiniti dealership. I really couldn't give you an unbiased review on Infinities though, because obviously there are more G-Series vehicles sold than any other. Story 66. This is funny, because everyone in the US always says that Volkswagens have so many problems, but no mentions that I have seen so far. I think vans are just prone to problems. I replaced 2 fuel pumps, an alternator for belts, and a wheel bearing in a 96 Astro van in the 2 years I drove it, and P.S. I'm not a mechanic, but my dad is a diesel mechanic, so I have the tools and the help when I ask for it. Story 67. As an owner of a 07 Honda Civic, I can say I have yet to have any problems other than just changing oil, replacing tires, air filters, regular fluids, and brake pads. Thank you Thread for confirming that it was a good choice. I also used to own a PT Cruiser, didn't make the drive from the East Coast to LA. Story 68. No one seems to say this, but Volvos are pretty reliable. My family has had one for 9 years now, and the only problems are, the clutch for the AC is worn down, but you can just take a bread twisty thing and put it in there to fix it. You have to clear the drainage lines from the sunroof sometimes, because they get clogged from leaves falling on the car. That's about the only sort of problems we've had with it in all 9 years. Story 69. Say what you want about Toyotas being cars. We have 3 in my family, all of them over 200k miles. None of them have ever had any major problems. Upkeep is all you need. I'm sticking with Toyota. Story 70. Not a mechanic, but I remember my mom's 1989 Ford Taurus wagon being in the shop on pretty much a weekly basis. She vows never to buy American-branded cars again. Story 71. I'm a mechanic. The best car to buy is a Japanese 4-cylinder, new or used. However, I think Toyota's quality has suffered in recent years. I liked Hyundai for a while, and while they're way better than they used to be, they are still not as good as Honda or Toyota IMO. I had a 2012 Elantra with 19,000 miles the other day in my shop. I was doing an alignment on it and oil was leaking from the timing cover. Already it's a timing chain, so the timing cover is sealed. Maybe just a quality control issue. Anyway, older Euro cars are something to avoid, mostly the Germans. Lots of oil leaks and super brittle plastic parts. The 1 Euro car I'd recommend is the 2000 to 2003 VW TDI. That is what I drive. I have 192,000 on mine, and literally the only thing eBay had to do to it, other than regular maintenance brakes, timing belt, oil changes, etc., was the serpentine belt idler pulley. The bearing came apart at 125k miles. Other than that, excellent car. What I tell everyone I know to avoid at all costs is anything made by Ford ever, hard to work on and just shitty total pieces of. I hate Ford with a passion. Chevy trucks are among the best, though. I like Chevy trucks, Chevy cars, pretty much all Chrysler vehicles other than the Dodge Cummins diesel. Don't even get me started on the PT Cruiser. GM cars, the 3, 13, 43, 8v6 motors are horrible to work on. The intake manifolds leak coolant on all those all the time, and it is a large, tedious job to get done. Not difficult, it's just that a ton of has to be removed to replace the manifold gasket. Including the god pushrods and rocker arms, because the pushrods go through the lower intake gasket. Who the designed that? Why anyway, it's all just nuts and bolts, but some cars are way easier to work on than others and require a lot less maintenance and breakdown of a lot less. Though Honda Odysseys are among the most common vehicles in our shop, engine mounts break on those things constantly. Story 72. The answer's not as simple as you think. The best cars generally tend to be from the big Japanese three, Honda, Toyota, and Mazda. More on that later. Most if not all European vehicles do not go the distance. They work well but tend to fray and frizzle due to the cutting-edge electronics and whatnot that are always installed on these. The only two exceptions to this rule are Volvo, and some read this twice some sobs. Out of the American manufacturers, it's a toss-up between General Motors and Ford. Avoid Chrysler and its brands like the plague. All American makes, however, are generally made and designed with some design quirks that make repair skyrocket when some common things need to be replaced. On to the Japanese. Most if not all of the main model cars are generally considered about as kosher as you can get. But the biggest thing to remember in picking a car outside of these guidelines is this: the more options and horsepower a car has, the more expensive it will be to maintain. Keep it simple and follow a strict maintenance schedule, and a Japanese car could last 200k before the cost of driving it and the value of the vehicle swap places. Story 73. I run a small rental car fleet with a huge variety of cars. We carry a little bit of everything. This means I maintain over 100 cars of many different makes and models. The worst are the cheap domestic cars. Stuff like PT Cruiser, HHR, Aveo, are all pretty much garbage. On the other end of the spectrum are the Corolla, Civic and Mazda 3. HHRs and PT Cruisers are my least favorite. The HHRs have interior door handles that break constantly, and require replacement of the entire door panel. At a cost of about $300 per door, PT Cruisers seem to be designed to make everything to work on. They're just terrible. The only entry-level domestic compact that's even passable is the Ford Focus IMO. They still have some things about them but they're better than the competition. I also hate the Ford 500s. They break non-stop and everything is expensive, as the GM full-size cars seem to do a bit better, by way of being archaic, but at least they're reliable. I don't even own a personal car right now, so I drive home a different rental fleet vehicle every day. If I have a bunch of cars on the lot and a bunch of choices, my go-to is the Mazda 3. I'm a car enthusiast, and they drive and handle really well. The sport package cars with the bigger wheels and the 2.3 are actually surprisingly fun to drive, comfortable, economical, and well-built. Story 74. Not a mechanic, but I used to deal them the parts they needed and worked pretty closely with them. I will never ever buy anything remotely related to Chrysler, pains in all of them. I used to love Ford trucks until I had to find brake parts for them. 50 billion different sizes and options for the same model and year, and no way to tell what you were working on until you tore it apart. I would send a truck bed full of rotors, drums, pads, shoes and hardware to shops and tell them to just return what they don't use. I'm not a fan of Volvo either, especially the Ford-produced generation. We owned one that you couldn't even sneeze around for fear the CL would come on, and Volvo doesn't release parts or manuals to retailers until the model is 10 years old. I own a MKI Volkswagen, and I can see why European cars get so much flack. They're a driver's car. You need to love it and baby it. If you try to slap cheap AutoZone brand parts on it, which most shops usually buy the cheapest they can and then charge you $300 more for it, and use Pennzoil, you're going to have a bad time. If you want a daily driver you'll never have to worry or get excited about, get a Honda or Toyota. If you don't mind getting dirty and want something fun that'll last forever, go German. Except 99-04. That was a mistake and we're sorry.